Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live. I'm so excited that you're here because today we're going to be talking about things to do, teacher to-dos, during the first week of school. There's so many things that you do as a teacher to get ready for the first week of school. And then when it gets here, you've already done so much, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, what do I need to do? Or maybe it's your first year teaching and you're like, I have no idea what to do the first couple days of school. Like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to teach? Like, what do I do? So today I want to talk to you a little bit about that. As with all of our other trainings here, whether you're watching me live or you're watching a replay, you're going to find lots of additional links, especially for things that I'm mentioning and showing you in the video description. So don't forget to check those out as well. So I have some notes here so that I don't forget anything. So if you see me looking down, that's why. There's a lot we're going to unpack in this video. I have some things to share with you, of some free resources I want to show you. But most importantly, the very first thing that I want to talk to you about is, aside from thinking about academics when it comes to first year or first week of school, when we think of school, we think, okay, I have to teach the curriculum, I have to do all of these things, I have to do all of these other things. But sometimes we often forget that the most important things that we can do during the first 2 to 4 weeks of school, especially for our students that are in our special education classrooms, is teach those rules, those routines, those procedures, those expectations, not only just for what do you do when you come into the classroom, but how do we use different activities in the classroom? What does that look like? What do I do if I need to sharpen my pencil? What is that routine? What is that expectation? And so I want to go over a couple of the different expectations or rules and routines, things that maybe you want to go over or think about for when you are planning for your first week of school and those first weeks back. So I have my own list, but I do have some free resources and these lists linked for you, which my notes are based off of this, in the description here, so you can go ahead and download those at any time. So the first thing, I don't think they're in any specific order, but I'm going to share them with you just in the order that I have them printed here. The first thing that I want to show with you is just it's a procedures and routines, kind of. Maybe this is what you might expect or have to think about, or maybe your mind is forgetting some of these things. Don't forget about these things that you want to teach, routines and expectations, or at least in your mind have thought about all of these things that are going to happen to you during the first year of school. Like, what do you do if a student throws up? Now, that is generally not something that happens in the first week of school, but you never know. It could happen. It is going to happen at some point in your teaching career. And so you want to think about what do you do when that happens? What happens if Stephanie throws up in the classroom? Who do you call? What do you do with that area? What does the student do? And so you have to think through all of those things. And so this goes through different, again, this is a free download. You can print it out for yourself and kind of check things off as you thought about them, or set up those routines and gone over them with your students. But like morning routine, how do you enter the classroom? Where do you keep the backpacks? How do students turn in notes and homework? What are the morning activities? What's the morning work that you are going to have students do? You want to make sure that you have that ready for the first day of school. You want to have your solid schedule set. Now, schedule should be flexible. I will say that, because as teachers, not even just special education teachers, but as teachers in general, our schedules are changing all the time, especially for us special education teachers. We could probably go through 100 different schedule changes in the first week of school. Let's be real. But we want to have our schedule set up. It can change, and that's okay. But we want to have that schedule set up for the first day. We want to have our morning routine ready to go. And so you want to make sure you have all of those things. What about attendance? Are you like, how do you take attendance? Are you going to have the students kind of move a pencil or move something on the board so that you can check attendance? Or are you just going to visually say, okay, Stephanie's missing today, I need to mark that down? What about lunch count? How are you going to handle that? Where do lunch boxes go? And so again, thinking through all of these different procedures, routines, rules, expectations for yourself and also for your students. There's different things for rules and behaviors, different expectations. So how to line up. What are the hallway expectations? What are our cleanup expectations? Lunchroom, snack, voice levels when we're working. What about when we're sitting at the carpet? Are we supposed to be crisscross applesauce? Are they allowed to keep their feet out? Do we have to stay on our spot? Like, what does that look like? How do we leave the classroom? Different emergency procedures. What does the fire drill? Now that usually comes from admin. Hey, we're going to have a fire drill on this day to practice the procedure, right? That usually happens the first month of school. We have that fire drill. We have a practice lockdown. We have, if you're in a state that has severe weather, we're practicing what those severe weather drills look like. Again, this is a checklist just to get you started so you don't forget anything as you're going through in your mind mentally. What are the things that I should be thinking about? Some other ones that I wrote down. So how do they hand in homework? How are they handing in paperwork? What are your transitions going to look like? What about procedures for using materials, games, centers, etc., all of that? I am going to get into talking about different activities that you could have set up for the first weeks of school. But what I want to show you and what I'm talking about when using materials, games, centerpieces, and things like that. So when it comes to your classroom and how you are going to have it set up, how you're going to run centers, the curriculum, all of that stuff, there are probably going to be some things. I'm going to use an example of task boxes and adapted books, adapted work binders. And I have some examples to show you that you're going to use that setup, maybe not the same exact book or the same exact task box or the same exact file folder activity every single day, but all adapted work binders work the same, right? All adapted books work the same. Task boxes are the same. File folder activities are the same. And so you're probably going to store them in a similar position or a similar spot, or students have to, whatever it may be, whatever that rule or routine is for that student. And for that, how do they put this away? What are they expected to do when they're finished with an adapted work binder? Are you going to put all the pieces back with an adapted book? Are you going to put all the pieces back on the thing on the sides here? Or are you going to expect students to reset everything? And so that routine has to be set up from day one. And so this is an adapted book. This is actually my first day of school, so this is a great one to use at the beginning of school. But don't be afraid to start using these things at the beginning of the very school year, like the first day. Like this could be one of the first things that you do during a calendar routine. Maybe every day we're going to do an adapted book together. Again, set up that calendar routine and have it ready to go for the first day. That way, if you need to tweak it, you can, but you're going to have that routine. Students know I come in, I have to do X, Y, Z, and then it's time for calendar. Then we're going to do attendance. We're going to listen to the announcements, all of those things. And so what are students expected to do? How are they participating when they're doing an adapted book, when they're doing a task box? What are the expectations for cleanup? Where should all the pieces go? Do they go back on the task cards, or can they just throw them back in the task bin and put the task bin where it goes? So again, with adapted books, are they resetting it? Where do these go when they're done? You want to make sure you're setting all those expectations and rules and routines up for them from the very beginning. So that way, when you introduce a different topic of adapted book, or you introduce or change the task box skill activity, the task box activity is probably still going to be very similar or the same, but they already know what to do. And so the only thing that's different is going to be the skill itself or what they're learning, right, within that activity. Same can go for put-in tasks. This is just one I grabbed really quick. It's very, very simple. It's just a plastic box. I drilled a hole in the top, and then these little party pom-poms of the plastic ones. What are the expectations when we're doing these types of activities? Remember, we're not throwing things. We're setting up those expectations. We're putting them all in. We're making sure that everything is in here before we're finished. When we're finished, it goes here. Again, rules, routines, expectations, and procedures. We want to have them all down packed and start teaching them the very first day of school. That is going to set you up for so much success when it comes to the rest of the school year. Okay, so take your time. There's a quote, and I share it every back to school season. I wish I would have pulled it so that I could read it verbatim to you. But it's the teachers who set something about the teachers who prepare their students with the routines and expectations the first 2 weeks of school pretty much are set for the rest of the year. But the teachers who don't do that are setting themselves up for teaching those rules and expectations and procedures the entire school year. And so you set yourself up for success now, front load all of that. It's going to make everything so much easier and so much simpler throughout the rest of the school year. You're not even going to have to think about it. It's going to become second nature to you and your students. It's just going to make your life, again, so much better. So this is the one free download that you can download on the website. I've linked it in the training below, or in the description of this training. There's also another one. So this has a blog post that goes along with it. I've linked the free resource, and I've also linked the blog post that goes with it. So the blog post is linked below. It's the first year teacher tips for special education teachers. And this free resource is linked in that blog post, but I also pulled it out. And so the very first section of the video description is mentioned free resources. This is also linked there, so you can just grab that as well. And then the blog post is linked when you download this PDF. And so there's advice for a new school year, advice for on things to prep now, advice on things to buy now, advice on things to keep you, the teacher, healthy. And so you can download this. It's a checkbox. There we go. And so you can kind of check things off. We're going to talk about things to prep now in a little bit. We're going to get to that. And then another free resource that I have to share with you, I'm actually going to hold off for a second. And so rules, routines, expectations, and procedures, that is first and foremost the thing that you want to be thinking about when it comes to the first couple of days of school. And really the first 2 to 4 weeks of school, we're really setting students up with those expectations, rules, routines, and procedures. Again, you keep hearing me say it over and over again because it's so important. The next thing that you want to think about when it comes to teaching the first week, 2 weeks of school, notice I didn't say 4 weeks, I said like the first week or 2 of school, are those baseline assessments. And so when you get a new student in the middle of the school year, you're going to get a new student. You get their IEP, but you're like, I don't really know where the student is performing. And so at the beginning of the school year, it's kind of similar, right? Except we have all of our students. And so once you're finished thinking about your rules, routines, expectations, and procedures, you want to start thinking about the baseline assessments that you're going to give to your students. So here at Mrs. D's Corner and the Intentional IEP, we do have our IEP screeners that you can use to baseline assess pretty much any academic skill pre-K through grade 6. We also have assessments in the shop. I didn't link them below, but I'll come back and link them for you in the comments. And so those of you watching the replay will have those links here. But whatever baseline assessments you're using in the classroom, it can be something district provided. It could be something real simple as giving students manipulatives. Can you show me 3? And then they count 1, 2, 3. And then you're just kind of taking notes on a sticky note or whatever it may be, a data sheet. And so taking those baseline assessments, you want to make sure that you know where your students are performing. Yes, you have their IEPs. Yes, you should have access to their progress notes from the end of last school year. But we all know some students may show some regression over summer if they didn't go to ESY, or maybe they did, but they still are showing regression. We need to know where to start academically, socially, behaviorally, all of those things with our students. And we can't do that if we're not finding out where our students are right at the beginning of the school year. This also gives you great data for not only progress notes, but for the rest of the school year. Because when you go to give them their progress reports, mid-year, or maybe you're doing more baseline assessments mid-year because you're comparing beginning of the year to middle of the year to end of the year, it gives you those great data points so you can track progress or regression for students on all of these skills. Now, I would do baseline assessments for grade level things, but also prerequisite skills, because a lot of our students are going to be multiple grade levels behind their peers. And so you want to check prerequisite skills for those grade level curriculum standards or the curriculum that they're using. What skills are we going to be working on? So see where they are with all of that. But then you also want to check their IEP goals and objectives, right? So look at the data from the last marking period or their last progress note that you have access to, and then take some data on see how that compares to where they were to where they are now. And so that's going to give you some great data, not only for figuring out what you're going to be teaching in your classroom, but also what accommodations and modifications do you need to help students access that general education curriculum. Do we maybe need to, at the beginning of the year, have an amendment and think about updating service times or adding an accommodation to modification here? So those baseline assessments are going to give you so much data and so much just, meat and potatoes for the rest of the school year when it comes to figuring out what that student needs to be successful in the classroom, not just your classroom, but in school and in life as well. And so don't forget to think about those baseline assessments the first 2 weeks of school, aside from academics, because academics are important, but we can't get to the academics if we don't know where our students are functioning, especially our special education students. And so your main focus the first 2 weeks of school truly should be, what are the rules, expectations, procedures, and all of those things, but also what are the baseline assessments. So whether you're teaching in self-contained, whether you're a resource teacher, whether you are a co-teacher, push in, pull out, no matter what your role is as a special education teacher, you should be spending some time the first 2 weeks of school collecting that baseline data, because that's going to give you a lot of information on where you need to start with all of your students. From there, you can then begin planning academics. Yes, you can do academic things with your students the first 2 weeks of school. So don't put words in my mouth, and don't think I'm saying don't do any academics the first 2 weeks of school, just give them assessments. You can still do academic things. You want to make sure they're aligned with either the curriculum, depending upon, again, your caseload and what classroom setting they're in. So if they're in inclusion, if they're in a resource classroom, they're probably going to be closer to grade level than students who are possibly in a self-contained classroom, just from my experience in teaching all of those different classroom settings. And so you're probably going to work on those grade level expectations with students when it comes to academics, the curriculum. When it comes to other things, you can plan, I like to call them evergreen. And so what that really means is they're activities that you can use at any point during the year. So for example, this task box that I grabbed randomly out of my cabinet is snowmen. And so yes, I could use it year round, but more than likely this is probably like a December, January, February task box that we're going to use to do counting to 10. I think it's to 10. And we're going to do one to a correspondence, all of those things. Again, this adapted book, first day of school, very situational for the very first day of school, right? I'm not going to read this book in November. If I have a new student, I might share this with them in a center. I might maybe read it when we come back to school after winter break. But again, it's not going to be the very first day of school, so it's not all going to apply. This is a very situational, I don't want to call it holiday, but a very situational thing. It's for a very specific day or season within your classroom. Evergreen things are things that you can do all year round. So you can do number counting task boxes, but maybe it's rainbows, or maybe you're counting teddy bears, those teddy bear counters. Maybe it's for those colored bears, and so we're doing this as a yellow bear, and so maybe we're doing that. Maybe it's shapes instead. So evergreen, things that you can do year round. There is a time and place for all of the fun activities and things like this, but things I like to prep over summer, which we're going to get to based off of this other list that we were talking about, things to prep now over summer. I like to prep evergreen things that I can use all year round, that I can use with all of my students, but multiple students at a time. I'm not just prepping one activity for one student that they're going to use 1 or 2 weeks out of the year. I really want to get the most bang for my buck and prep things that I'm going to see all year round, right? And if a student masters that skill, this is something that I can hold on to and tuck away in my teacher toolkit or my file cabinet or a box or something where I'm like, oh yeah, I don't, what's on here? Nothing for the first week of school. I was hoping I had something to give me an idea. But we're gonna count these colors, and let's pretend this is a task box. And okay, so we have colored task box, and we're not counting colored pumpkins, right, for October. Maybe we're counting just little circles, and so, or we're doing the colors of the circles. And so I can use the circle colors all year round, but the pumpkin colors, I'm probably only going to use during October, maybe a little bit in November. And so the circles I can use all year round. Whenever I get a new student, I can also use those during my assessments, my baseline assessments for beginning of the year, end of the year, middle of the year. You can use the evergreen things at any time of the year. So when it comes to things, we'll just go right into that. When it comes to things that you're going to be prepping over summer, I know here in this area, teachers went back to school 2 weeks ago. And so I know in my family up north in Pennsylvania, I'm in Florida, my family in Pennsylvania, my nieces don't go back until after Labor Day. And so some of you are still in school, some of you are not. So things that you can prep now, whether you're in school or not, or if you're watching this next school year or in any future time, you can prep these things at any time. But things to prep now, aside from the evergreen things, back to that classroom schedule. And again, I'm just reading straight off of this right here. It is a free download for you, linked below this training. You want to have that prepped and ready to go for students so that they can see it. I like to put it on the front board. If you're going to be doing visual schedules or individual student schedules, you want to have those prepped and ready to use the first year or the first day of the school year as well. Same goes with special schedules. What is a special schedule? You want to know what that is because your students are going to go to specials with their peers as well. So who's going where and when? And how are you going to keep track of that? Prep your morning routine. Are you color coding your binders? I linked a video below here about color coding as well as IEP bins. IEP bins are a great thing to use with those Evergreen resources that you're going to be prepping. You want to prep your IEP binder, so your caseload binder, if you're going to have one, student IEP binders. Prep adapted materials, and so I have adapted work binders, file folders, adapted books, sorting mats, task bins, put in tasks. Again, evergreen things I can use throughout the entire school year. Are you going to have a sign-in sheet for related services? We have a free one in our TPT shop if you want to grab that. Are you going to have a classroom theme? You don't have to. If you're going to, you can determine that. But notice it comes after all of these other things, right? It is not a necessity to have your classroom decorated for the first day of school or at all. As long as you create a loving and caring environment for your students where they feel safe, that is truly all that matters. Are you going to have a welcome letter? Are you going to send that out? Are you going to do a parent handbook? Do you have a behavior plan for any of your students? Do you need to print that out? Do you need to get those data sheets? Do you have a classroom behavior plan or procedure set up? Determine your classroom procedures. So again, all of these things all intertwine and you will be using them all throughout the year. And so that's what you really want to work on at the beginning of the school year. That's when you want to be working on, if you're doing work and prep over summer, you want to be working on a lot of those different things. So 1, routines, rules, expectations, procedures. You want to make sure you've got those figured out either mentally or down on a piece of paper and that we're going over them. 2, those baseline assessments, again, they can be things that are very simple that you don't have to prep, like using flashcards for sight words or using manipulatives to count or shapes to find colors, or just using different shape blocks to identify 2D or 3D shapes. So simple things like that you don't have to prep anything for, or if you are prepping things, what are the evergreen things that you can prep and use in your baseline assessments as well. Again, we have assessments at Mrs. D's Corner, and we also have our IEP screeners at the Intentional IEP that are included in every membership, but also we have them linked in our TPT store. I'll come back and link them for you. But then a lot of school districts also provide the general education classroom teachers with baseline assessments as well. I know AimsWeb is a really good one that a lot of teachers use. So find out, ask admin what you have access to as the teacher and see if you can get access to it for your specific classroom and for your students. So baseline assessments. From there, then you're going to work on the academics, and that's where you're going to worry about just the evergreen things. What are some skills that all of your students are working on? Let's just practice these skills, get back into the habit of being back in school, back in the classroom, while we're also practicing these rules, routines, procedures, and expectations, right? But we're still working on academics as well. We're still filling in those baseline assessments, and then, well, we're filling in baseline assessments with academics as we're going out throughout the day. So, whew. That's a whole bunch of information, especially if you're a first-year teacher. You might be thinking, oh my goodness, this is so much to think about. Don't forget to download, start here. Download with these free sheets that I have here for you. Also, I have, and I didn't talk about them yet, I have lesson plans. We send out free lesson plans to our newsletter subscribers. They're linked below here. We started sending out August already, but if you haven't subscribed and you're just going to subscribe now and you want August lesson plans, go ahead and grab the first 4 weeks linked below here and it'll send them to you. But every Wednesday, so tonight actually we'll be sending, because today's Wednesday, as I'm filming this, tonight at 7 p.m. Central Time, or 7 p.m. Eastern Time actually. They're scheduled to go out every week. We send out different lesson plans. It's a PDF. You can click on things, and so it just gives you an idea of what you could potentially be teaching. There's also some blog posts linked that are very relevant for that time period or that month. And we do send them now this year in month sets, and so when you see the download link, it'll be all of August or all of September, but I will resend it every Wednesday. It's for the week coming up. So this Wednesday's lesson plans will be for next week. So it will give you a head start or a help there. You can click any of the resources to learn more about them, or any of the spots to learn more with a blog post, but we do have those as well. Don't let that trip you up. If you have any questions about planning anything in your classroom, please reach out. I would love to help you. You can also, again, if you're not in our Facebook group, which is where we're having all of these lives, it is a free Facebook group. I think we're over 36,000 educators now in this group, which is absolutely amazing. And so we would love to have you in the Facebook group to join us. If you have any questions, you can ask there at any time. Share pictures, pick all of our brains. We are here to help you succeed as a teacher, whether you're a first year teacher or a veteran teacher in the classroom, and have fun doing it. So thank you so much for being here for this live. I don't see any comments to answer live, but thank you so much for being here. If you do have any additional questions, you can leave a comment on this video. I will come back and answer questions periodically. You can send an email to support@mrsdscorner.com, or you can reach out on any social media platform or again in our Facebook group. You do have a lot of links linked below this training. I'm going to come back, and so those of you watching the replay are going to have all of them. Those of you here with me live, come back and I'll link some other things that I mentioned and didn't link at the first time around. But yes, thank you again so much for being here. Don't forget to like our page, Mrs. D's Corner, the Intentional IEP, or subscribe here on our YouTube channel. And I will see you guys in the next training.